It began on the kind of Wednesday that dissolves into evening without leaving any trace behind. No dramatic weather, no noteworthy accomplishment, just a blur of emails and a grocery bag hanging from one wrist that left a red mark hard to shake. The hallway light flickered as I unlocked the door, a trembling heartbeat overhead, and the apartment opened up to me like a stage set where nothing had moved since morning. The succulents on the kitchen sill looked overwatered. The coffee mug in the sink accused me of leaving in a rush. The living room, with its well-placed throw blankets and curated shelf of travel books, feigned warmth but felt hollow. Aaron was still at work. Client dinner, he had texted around 4, which now translated into late. Don't wait up. And I'll be there in body, not in spirit, no matter when he finally walked through the door. Lately, his schedule seemed like a separate being in our marriage, loud, demanding, jealous. We had learned this silence between us, the ritual of leaving each other to our routines. Mine involved reheating something beige and unremarkable in the microwave, placing it onto a plate that made the contents look more virtuous than they were, and turning on the TV at a politely low volume as if the neighbors might judge the show I wasn't really watching. I sank into the couch, back sinking deeper than I liked into the familiar dip, like it was learning my shape a little too well. I let the flicker of a sitcom roll over the room and did what most of us do when we want to stop feeling the edges of our lives. Picked up my phone, scrolling, what a delicate word for something so relentless. Faces, captions, destinations, pets, successes and life markers filtered and congratulated. I felt like a guest at a party where everyone told their best story right into my ear without breathing. Engagements with down-on-one-knee photos, airplane wing shots with bursts of clouds, anniversary posts with sepia-tone throwbacks and words like soulmate, forever, grateful. I believed them. I didn't resent them. I just felt steadily, quietly far away from them, like I was living alone on the shoreline watching ships blink in and out. The notification arrived with the innocent ping of a reminder, and yet something about it pulled the air from the room. A name, simple, sharp, impossible to misinterpret. Ethan. My thumb hovered without input from my brain. Ethan. I hadn't typed or read that name in years. The last time I had seen him, really seen him, was before Aaron, before I knew what it meant to merge bank accounts and calendars and expectations. Before Saturday mornings became chores and loyalty, and scented candles instead of coffee on stoops, and long, meandering arguments about books that ended only because the sun went down. "Hey," the message said. "Fancy seeing you pop up on my feed. How have you been?" The words were harmless. My pulse was not. I could have set my phone face down on the coffee table and walked to the window and watched the neighborhood dog walkers and felt proud of resisting something I didn't even fully understand. Instead, I typed, "Hey, wow, it's been a while. I've been okay, works wild, you." The blue light from the television made the room look like an aquarium. I used the volume buttons on the remote for the satisfaction of pressing them, not because I cared what the characters were saying. His reply came swiftly. "Busy too, can't believe it's you still living in the city, you look well." I don't know why that last word stung like sugar on a cut. Well, I typed that I was still here, that I married a good man named Aaron, that I worked in operations, which sounded less ridiculous than explaining the joyless fire drill my days sometimes felt like. He replied with the bullet points of his life, the consulting firm, the travel, the half-formed houseplants on his windowsill that refused to die. He said he still thought about the oceanside day trip we took our senior year when we got sunburned because autumn tricked us. He said he still remembered the way I always stole potato chips and then pretended I didn't. It wasn't a crime to laugh out loud. It wasn't a betrayal to remember. The laugh surprised me, an involuntary sound that didn't ask permission. I curled into the sofa corner knee first, like I used to do at 21. The show played on. A commercial flashed. I told myself it was good to be reminded that I had been someone before I learned what it meant to be responsible. By the time Aaron's key scraped the lock, I had set my phone down out of caution, as if it might burn me. He walked in quiet, tie loosened, face pale with fluorescent office lighting. He offered me a smile that felt like a formal handshake rather than a hug. I studied his features for a moment, the familiar lines, the reliable softness at the corner of his eyes when he was tired. It should have anchored me. Instead, I felt the shame of the small flare in my chest that hadn't belonged to him all evening. "Hey," he said, voice thin with exhaustion. "Sorry it's late. How was your day?" "Fine," I said, and I meant the dictionary meaning of the word. Adequate, unremarkable, smooth like glass over deep water. "You." "Long," he exhaled. "I'm going to shower." He disappeared down the hall. I stared at the phone as if it might resurrect and confess me. The bathroom fan hummed. I could imagine the steam gathering, fogging the mirror with a shape that would be wiped away by his hand. I felt a tremor of something cold and electric. And then the thought that would nibble at me for days. Nothing irreversible has happened. Not yet. It happened anyway. Not like lightning, not like a catastrophic break, but like a thaw that loosens something and allows movement where there wasn't any before. The next morning over coffee, my phone blinked. "Can I confess something?" Ethan wrote. "Seeing your face in my inbox pulled me out of a weird fog. You always did that. There are words that bounce off. There are words that lodge." I carried those with me to the train, to the office, to my keyboard. I typed between scheduled calls. We pinged simple observations like we used to do with pebbles on a lake, each one rippling the surface. He told me a joke about a consultant and a cat. I told him about the weird plant in the break room that no one watered but somehow wouldn't die. He asked if I still took my coffee black. I asked if he still hated mushrooms. It felt like picking up a book and finding my place without trying. It felt like being watched by a version of myself I missed. It felt, even in its smallness, like oxygen. That night when Aaron slid into bed and rolled to his cold side, I tried to summon the memory of our first road trip together. Of the way he leaned his head out the window like a kid when we crossed the state line. Of the sandwiches we ate on the hood of the car while feet dangled off the bumper. It didn't land. It made me ache worse. If the story ended there, it would be a footnote no one would read twice. An old name, a polite exchange, a quiet ache tucked away. But stories don't end at the convenient stopping point, and I didn't reach for the break. I reached for my phone. "Hey," I wrote just before sleep, against better judgment and in full clarity. "Today was nicer than most. Thanks for that." The reply came before I could set the device down. "Any time," he said. "I missed your voice." I slept with the worst kind of anticipation. The kind that nestles into your chest and makes morning feel like a promise you shouldn't keep. It didn't become an affair overnight. There were no doors swung open, no buttons ripped, no hotel keys balanced on fingertips. It began with permission where there should have been none. The allowance I gave myself to treat attention like medicine instead of a symptom. After a week, our messages had a rhythm. After 2, they had an orbit. The time between texts shrank like a sweater in hot water. The day started not with headlines or emails, but with Ethan's first ping. A meme, a song lyric, a blurry photo of his coffee on a train, a half-glimpsed sun over the station platform. I sent him the spiderweb on my window that glittered with frost, the way the light hit my desk, a photo of a lopsided muffin. Innocuous, all of it. Then he asked for a photo of me. "Your face," he wrote. "Haven't seen it properly in forever. If that's okay." There was a version of the story where I sent him something silly. A funny angle, a scrunched nose, a message that said nothing but hello. And I did at first. I snapped a selfie by the office window at lunch, hair thrown into a messy knot, the city softened behind me. He replied with "There you are, still you." The words curled inside my chest like a cat finding a lap. By the end of that day, he had sent a photo too, not of him but of a page in a book he was reading underlined. "We love in fragments," the line said. "We carry versions of each other." I stared at it until the letters blurred. At home, Aaron moved through rooms with the efficiency of someone preserving energy. He cooked pasta mechanically, dished it, asked if I wanted a movie, and then drifted before the credits. He didn't know how loud my pocket had become, how my thumb knew the arc of the messaging app icon like a prayer bead. He didn't know I had begun to smile at nothing. "Do you ever think about that road trip we didn't take?" Ethan asked one night. "The one we planned out in the cheap diner with the jukebox when it rained for 3 days in a row. The one we were going to take if neither of us had summer jobs." "Of course," I typed, surprised at the fresh ache. "Through the mountains, then to the coast. We were going to sleep in the car and pretend it was an adventure on purpose." "God, we were idiots," he wrote. "Good idiots. Is there such a thing? Ask me in another lifetime. I should have stopped then. I should have closed the loop with something cheerful and guarded and kind. Instead, I let the nostalgia broaden inside me, like a window opening to let in air that would eventually sweep the framed photos off the sill. The first message that crossed the line did so politely. "You looked, I don't know, wonderful in that window light," he wrote after one of my selfies. "Forgive me if that's out of line." I forgave the comment. I forgave myself for reading it twice. I told myself kindness wasn't a sin. A few days later, a Friday soft with drizzle, I worked from home in a sweater and messy hair and sent him another picture. No makeup. My mouth curved slightly, the kind of half-smile that looks conspiratorial. It wasn't sultry. It wasn't anything that would light up a courtroom if printed and held up. But I knew the intention behind it. I felt my heart leap immediately, as if it had misjudged a stare. "Don't do that," he wrote. "Do what? Make me feel like I'm 19. How easy it was to fall into the warmth of that. How dangerous." My hands shook. I told myself to put my phone away. I did for 10 minutes. Then I picked it up again. The rest of the afternoon blurred. Aaron texted that he'd be home late again. I looked at our shared calendar and saw a dinner next Saturday with friends, a dentist appointment I had ignored for months, a condo association meeting I meant to attend. The future felt like a hallway of obligations. Then my phone buzzed with a photo from Ethan. Just a corner of his mouth, a shadow of a smirk, nothing else, a suggestion, a dare. I took a photo in the bedroom mirror. Neckline a little lower than usual, not obscene. Suggestive by implication, and I knew it. The room ticked with the vent. My face felt hot. For a moment, I thought about tossing my phone under the bed like an object gone bad. Then I sent the picture and curled my toes into the rug, waiting as if a grade would arrive. "Oh," he wrote, then, "you're dangerous." Then, "God." And then he didn't say anything for a long minute that felt like an hour. I felt sick and giddy and sick again. I stared at the door as if Aaron might open it right then, and the air would solidify with all the words I couldn't take back. He didn't, but even thinking he might became a new anxiety in the house. We didn't progress beyond that line immediately. Days went by with mundanity. Work, dishes, talking about paint colors we would never actually change. Aaron told me about a colleague's promotion and I said that's great, and wondered if anyone would ever again mention my name in a room with excitement. Ethan and I traded songs and one-liners and emoji sequences that made us laugh, but a seed had sprouted, and roots are persistent even when you don't water them. The second line was easier to cross than the first. No glass shattered. No alarm screamed. Another evening at home, another message. Another photo, this one careful and cropped. It was like learning a language where grammar didn't protect you, only context did, context that I was now actively erasing. Then the luck that had shielded me slipped one notch. We were on the couch together, Aaron and I, a rare quiet evening where both of us were home at a decent hour. We were rewatching a show we had once devoured, perhaps trying to conjure the past by replicating the habits that once led us to it. My phone buzzed, my reflexes betrayed me. I reached too quickly, too naturally. Aaron's gaze flicked from the screen to my hand. "Who's been messaging you so much lately?" he asked, neutral like an open road sign. "No one," I said, a lie small and large at once. "A group chat." "A group chat," he repeated, drawing out the vowels. He wasn't suspicious yet. He was cataloging. I moved my phone face down onto the coffee table, a gesture of transparency that was anything but. Aaron's eyes stayed on the TV. Mine stayed on the reflection of the room in the black glass, where we were both ghostly and shallow. That night I plugged my phone into the charger on my side of the bed, and placed its screen down and swallowed the hard pill of guilt that didn't dissolve. Ethan's last message lay there like a coal I refused to extinguish. "I can't stop thinking about you today." The cracks widened in ways that were both ordinary and irreversible. A missed look here, an evaded question there. A small shift in how I held my body when Aaron walked into rooms. A quiet thrill at a vibration in my pocket even while stirring a pot on the stove. It was astonishing and humbling to realize how quickly I began to inhabit two selves, one that could discuss renters' insurance and weekend laundry, and another that awaited the next digital breath from someone who existed almost entirely on my screen. When I finally admitted to myself that something essential had moved, it was already far enough away from its original place that I couldn't drag it back without breaking it. I slept poorly. I turned dreams over like warm stones and looked underneath, always finding the same damp, cold truth. I was inventing a parallel life and telling myself it was a harmless daydream. I don't know if I believed that lie. I do know I preferred it. It was a Sunday that had started soft, with sunlight slanting through the blinds in careful strips like an apology for all the blunt mornings that came before. For once, neither of us had alarms. The apartment felt like a held breath released slowly. We made coffee without talking much, but the quiet didn't bite. Aaron handed me a mug and sat close enough that our knees almost touched. It was a moment that would have been ordinary if not for the terrible audience inside me. The secret-keeping seat in the front row, taking notes. He asked if I wanted to go for a walk by the river later. I said yes too quickly, hopeful we could stitch something together in the open air. The possibility felt real enough to lean toward. Maybe this could be a day that pivoted us back into alignment. Maybe I could delete messages, issue apologies that didn't expose everything, reclaim my attention and redirect it to where it belonged. The mind is generous with castles in the air built at the last minute. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I startled a fraction, an invisible twitch that somehow felt visible to the whole world. Aaron glanced. It was a look so small I might have invented it. He took a sip of coffee. I told myself to breathe the length of the room. Another buzz. Then another, a string. Ethan was rarely that careless. Nor was I the anchor that had held my lie underwater loosened. "Who is it?" Aaron asked, even casual, not yet loaded. "Just work," I said, and I wanted to bite into the word and swallow it whole. I reached for the phone, ready to turn it over and tuck it elsewhere, delay, deflect, promise myself a hard conversation with me and not with him. Aaron's hand was faster, not angry fast, final fast. He took the phone and looked at me for a second, long enough to ask a question without words. Then he looked at the screen. 3 messages lined up like dominoes about to tip. "Can't stop picturing last night. Are you alone? Say something. I'm losing my mind over here." For a strip of time I cannot measure, the room became a photograph. Aaron didn't move. I watched the muscles along his jaw flicker like a set of blinds in wind. The coffee smelled suddenly metallic. A car outside rolled past and the sound slid against the window pane. My heart hammered so hard and so obvious I wondered if the table might vibrate. He scrolled. There was more to see, not volumes but enough. My photos, careful but not innocent. The words I had typed, trying to make them too unspecific to indict me but too charged to be misunderstood. The evidence of my wanting to be wanted. He read with a stillness that terrified me more than shouting would have. "Who is he?" His voice finally arrived, stripped of all decoration. "An old," I began. "Don't," he said softly, and something in me obeyed. "Who is he?" "His name is Ethan," I answered, and watched the world tilt a degree. "From before me." "Yes." "How long?" The truth felt like a mass in my throat I couldn't swallow or spit. "A few weeks," I said, hating the sound I made on the second word. He nodded, slow, as if counting backward from an impossible number. He set the phone down as though it might explode. He clasped his hands together and studied them like they would tell him how to be human in this exact moment. When he finally looked at me, it was a gaze I didn't know yet. Wounded, yes, but also disbelieving. as if in losing trust he was losing gravity and didn't know how to keep his feet on the floor. "Did you sleep with him?" "No," I said too quickly then slower. "No, I didn't." He winced at the relief that rushed to his face, then winced again at the fact that relief existed at all. "You sent him pictures," he said, not a question, "and words that were meant to belong to me." I tried to respond, and what came out was a child's plea. "It wasn't like that, it was stupid, it was a mistake, I was bored and I—" "Bored," he repeated and laughed once, one sharp, unmusical note. "You burned our house because you were bored." I didn't cry yet. My body knew better than to claim the stage. "I'm sorry," I said, which was true but insufficient, like bringing a flower to a flood. "I didn't think it would become." "But it did," he said, "because you wanted it to." I flinched. The worst part of being known is that you can't hide in half-truths. "I wanted to feel," I started, and he finished for me. "Wanted," he said quietly. "You wanted to feel wanted, and I made you feel what? Invisible." "No," I said, and then yes, and then no again. It was both and neither. It was a grief too large for the room, for the cup of coffee cooling on the table, for the ordinary rug under our feet that now bore witness. "It's not your fault," I said, and meant it and also understood its cruelty. "I should have told you I was unhappy. I should have told myself the truth." He stood. He walked to the sink and turned on the water and turned it off, as if practicing control. He pressed his palms to the counter and breathed. He returned to the couch but sat farther away like a tide receding. "Do you love him?" he asked. "No," the word came from my bones. "I don't." "Do you love me?" The silence that followed was the cruelest thing I have ever done. It lasted only a second, but silence in that place spoke a thesis. "Yes," I said finally fiercely. "I love you. I am God. I am so sorry." He nodded again, a small, defeated bow. "I believe that you're sorry," he said. "I do. But believing you're sorry and being able to live with this are different universes." We tried to talk. Or rather, I tried to stack words into something that looked like a bridge. He listened, and then the listening broke and he stood and walked to the bedroom and came back with a duffel bag, as if the future had already been staged off-screen, and now the set was being changed. He wasn't cruel. He didn't slam doors. He picked up his phone charger and his shaving kit and left the framed photos on the console like objects belonging to strangers. "I'm going to stay at Matt's," he said, his voice almost gentle, and that hurt in a new way. "I can't look at this room right now and not see all of it." "Please don't go," I whispered, word after word depleted. "Please, this is a wound, not a death. We can." He lifted a hand, not to silence me, but to steady himself. "I don't know what we can do," he said. "I only know what I can't do. I can't unsee this. I can't unknow it. And I can't sit here and imagine you in another room sending pieces of yourself to someone else and convince myself that the pieces aren't the whole." He left the key. He closed the door with an exaggerated gentleness that made me want to scream. I stood still long enough that the lines on the rug imprinted my feet. I looked at my phone, black-faced, wicked little oracle that had delivered me here, then at the evidence of a Sunday morning that had dared to begin benignly. The coffee was cold, the sun was bright, the apartment was altered forever. I sat, finally, and then I broke. It wasn't a cinematic sob, it was an animal sound that felt like it belonged to some ancestor. It made my throat raw, my eyes alien. When it receded, I could hear the refrigerator purr, the neighbor's laugh, a siren in the far distance that wasn't for me but might as well have been. Hours later, when the light shifted and the room looked like a version of itself cast by a slightly lazy actor, I texted Ethan one sentence: "Don't contact me again." Then I powered off my phone, the only decisive gesture I had made in months, and sat with the quiet as punishment and as teacher. Grief remapped the apartment. The couch where he had sat became a museum exhibit. On this site, trust was declared insufficient. The kitchen sink was an altar where I put my hands and confessed to no one. The bed was a landscape I crossed alone each night, a country where borders had been redrawn so that the same space now required twice the energy to traverse. The hallway lights flickered more often, as if wincing. The framed photos watched me with the keen patience of witnesses who had promised neutrality. The days had a texture like unwashed wool. Work was merciless in its indifference. Spreadsheets do not shore you up or call you out. Colleagues asked me the kind of questions that pretend intimacy. How was your weekend? And I said, quiet, as if I were describing weather. In the bathroom mirror at the office, I studied the small changes. The tightness around my mouth, the paler lips, the way my eyes kept locating corners of the room as if escape hatches might be hidden there. Therapy entered my life like a chair pulled up to a table I had been eating at while standing. The chair was uncomfortable at first because sitting implied staying. The therapist's office bore the usual elements: soft lamp, tissue box, a plant that looked authentically alive. I told her the story the way people tell their own sad stories, apologizing in the telling, trying to curate my disgrace into something aesthetically tolerable. She nodded sparingly. She asked questions that landed like handholds on the cliff. "Why Ethan?" she asked in our second session, skipping the easy versions. "Because he was the past, and the past doesn't ask you to be accountable to the present," I said before I could filter it. "Because he remembered a version of me I liked more." "And what did that version have that you think you lost?" "Lightness," I answered. "Permission to be just myself without being someone's partner, someone's employee, someone's project manager of the grocery list. No calendar." "And what else?" "Attention," I said. "He gave me clean attention." She nodded. "And what would it have looked like to ask for attention in your marriage?" I laughed then, bitter and low. "Like neediness," I said. "Like failure. Like admitting something was wrong. So you chose a version that allowed you to perform the opposite, effortless desirability. The kind that requires no negotiation, no shared chores, no seeing each other in bad lighting." "I chose a shortcut," I said. "And shortcuts through forest are how people get lost." We worked. That word is both heavy and blessed. I learned to sit in the discomfort of what I had done without frantically explaining away its sharpness. I learned that guilt can be clarifying when it does not turn into self-obliteration. I learned to trace the line between dissatisfaction and betrayal, to mark it on my map in fluorescent ink. I wrote apologies I did not send. I wrote letters to myself at 21 and 32. I listed what I had wanted from Aaron and hadn't said out loud, because asking felt like opening a door to rejection I feared would prove some private thesis about my unlovability. I did not ask Aaron for forgiveness. Not because I didn't want it, I craved it with the kind of aching that kept me awake, but because the shape of my apology had to be separate from the shape of his relief. When we finally spoke after 2 months of separation, our conversation took place in a park, on a bench where the wood had been carved into with hearts long since grown over. He looked like himself and not like himself. An adjunct of grief had been applied, a slight dimming like the way sunlight gets thinner in winter. "Thank you for meeting me," I said. He nodded. "I wanted to hear you say you're okay." "I am not okay," I said, a small gift of truth to both of us. "But I am better at telling the truth than I used to be." We talked like people who had practiced this conversation in their heads, so often the words felt worn. He didn't ask for explanations. I didn't offer him any that framed me as a protagonist. We shared a silence that didn't eat us. He told me about a new project at work that kept him busy in a way that didn't kill him. I told him I had started running badly and religiously. We both laughed at the same time and startled at the sound. When the topic turned, finally, we didn't look at each other. "I don't think I can go back," he said. "I've tried in 100 imaginary rooms. In none of them do I sleep." "I know," I said, and did not beg, which felt like growing up 6 inches in a minute. "I want you to be able to breathe." He nodded, eyes glistening the way dew does on hard mornings. "I hope you're happy," he said, and then amended. "No, I hope you're honest and then happy because of that." We walked to separate trains. I cried later, not because it was surprising, but because dignity costs tears if you haven't practiced it. Time did what time does. It layered the days so they were not all pointy. The apartment became less haunted. I moved the couch and it felt like claiming land. I cut my hair, and every woman knows what that means. I deleted old threads, and the silence that followed was not empty. It was containing. I learned to cook a dish that required my attention so fully that my mind could not narrate failure while I was making it. I met a friend every Thursday to walk slowly and complain and laugh and not touch our phones. My therapist asked me, months in, what I believed about myself now that wasn't true before. I told her I believed I could feel a terrifying thing and not act on it, that I could watch a desire flare and not fan it, that I could ask for attention without confusing the request with the confirmation of my worst fears. I told her I believed that love was not a spell that either worked or didn't, but a set of dirty, precious acts done again and again with a person who also chose you, and that if that person got lost or you did, the map back wasn't always shared. I walked by the river one late afternoon and watched a couple argue quietly, hands in pockets, then watched them soften, hands emerge, fingers tangle. For the first time, it didn't feel like looking through glass. It felt like looking at something human I was capable of, not yet, not soon, but eventually. If I close my eyes now, I can still feel the exact dread of that Sunday morning, the way the coffee smelled at the moment a life pivoted, the way the word Ethan hung between us like a wire. I do not want to forget it, not because I want to punish myself forever, but because some lessons deserve monuments. Trust is a monument for me now, so is self-respect, so is the sentence. Do not send what your real self would not want read out loud in the quietest room of your home. I do not call what happened a blessing. That's the sort of self-congratulation that makes people roll their eyes, and rightly so. I call it a scar. Scars are instructive, they keep records. They do not reopen unless you pick at them. I touch this one gently, often, as a way of reminding myself what I cost myself and someone I loved by choosing a thrill over a conversation. Some nights I still reach for my phone out of old habit and then stop my hand midair and change course, toward a book, toward sleep, toward nothing at all. That pause is my favorite new muscle. It is tiny and strong. It has saved me from being the person who keeps retelling the same story under different names and calling it fate. I don't know what comes next, not in the Hollywood way. I know I wake up earlier and drink my coffee on the floor sometimes like a teenager. I know I stopped buying clothes to fill an ache that required presence, not fabric. I know that when a colleague compliments me, I let it land, and when a stranger's attention lingers, I am able to say inside thank you, and also no thank you. When I think of Aaron, I think of the first road trip and the exact shade of green the trees wore that day. I think of him eating a strawberry with closed eyes like it was a miracle. I think of Sunday morning light and how it became a reckoning. I hope he made a new home where the morning light is kinder. I hope he trusts again. As for me, I keep a small list on my fridge now, handwritten and inelegant. Tell the truth early. Ask for what is wanted. Don't punish boredom with destruction. Take walks before decisions. Charge the phone in another room. Touch the scar and then turn the page. It is not redemption what I'm after. It is decency, repeated. It is steadiness. It is a life that doesn't require secrecy to feel electric. I am building that life brick by unglamorous brick. And sometimes, on a Wednesday evening that would otherwise dissolve, I choose to stand at the window and watch the city breathe and remember that being here, present for it, is a thrill I don't have to steal. That being here, present for it, is a thrill I don't have to steal.